start recording. We're going to look at today why is that there? Oh, I know. We are going to look at the 1861 rifled musket, the Springfield musket. And the reason why we're going to be looking at this is you need to understand the weapons technology that was going on at the time this war began. There are no Uzis. There are no machine guns. There are no aircraft. There are no nuclear bombs. You can't nuke them. I've heard it all. I had some people this year saying that we should use nukes in the Revolutionary War. Nuclear weapons didn't come about until the end of World War II. So, the technology at the time was a rifled musket. Now, rifled muskets are not very accurate. They're more accurate than a regular musket because of the rifling inside. Rifling are grooves that make the whatever gets shot spin. But these guns are muzzle loaders. That means that you don't have bullets. You have to put everything in the muzzle of the gun. And so what I'm first going to do is go through some of the terminology so that you understand the various parts of this gun. And bear with me, I have my cheat sheet here because it's been a while since I've dealt with this, so I want to make sure that I can cover everything. So here is the actual gun itself. The open end of the gun, right there, is called the what? Anybody know? What is that? That is the muzzle. That open end area is the muzzle. Excuse me. That is the muzzle. What about that area of the gun? That area of the gun is called that's the butt. Who said butt? Get over it. Okay? Now, this long hollow tube thing is called the barrel. That is the barrel. And this part right here, it's a stick that runs all the way down here that can be taken out. That is called, anybody know? It is the ramrod, yes. That is the ramrod. The last thing, and I don't have it on this picture for whatever reason, so I'm going to back up here a little bit. This thing right here is an attachment that goes on the end of the rifle so that you can use the rifle as a spear. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you load it one shot at a time. So you might get one shot off and then have to attack people with the gun itself without firing. What is that attachment at the end to make it work like a spear called? It is a bayonet. Named after Bayonne, France. Now, let me go to this picture here. This item right there. Yeah. What? Nope. This musket does not have a flint. It's not a flintlock. This item right here is called anybody? This is the hammer. That is the hammer. And since I doubt many of you deal with muskets, I'll see, but I doubt anybody knows what that part of the gun is. Anybody think they know? Nope. Okay. This is specifically used in these old style weapons. This was known as the nipple. That was the nipple. And we'll talk later what goes on there, because that's what will light the powder that is inside the barrel. Having issues? Having issues, gentlemen, ladies? I didn't name them. This is just what they're called, so get over it. You're in junior high now. Now, we'll talk about the positioning of the hammer in a moment. Last thing that I'll get to. These are your cartridges. On the outside, there's paper. You have paper on the outside. Inside that paper, in this area here, you have the gunpowder. So the cartridge, it's a paper cartridge. Inside the paper, you have the gunpowder. Up on top, you have various types of bullets. This would be sort of like a shotgun. Small pellets, bigger balls. And this kind of bullet right here, that's a special name. It is called a Minié ball. Even though it's not shaped like a ball at all, it's actually shaped more like a modern bullet today. Developed by a French guy called Minié. Oftentimes in the United States, the soldiers wouldn't call it a Minié ball, they just call it a mini ball. Which makes it sound like it's a little tiny ball, but it's not. It's not even shaped like a ball. The actual Minié look like that. Those are actual Minié balls from the Civil War era. So, and this, that'd be the tail. Now this gun, I'm going to go back now. This gun is huge. This gun is 55 3/4 inches long. Here's the gun. That is the gun. Many of you, this gun is taller than you. I've had students that are smaller than this gun. Now, what was that? No? I actually had somebody say, I bet that gun is longer than me, and they wanted to come up and check. You're okay? It is approximately 4'8". 4'8". So, now, here's how it is loaded. Now, you might want to take a look on the back side as I go through this, because on the back side of your sheet, you will find the item, the listing of how to go through it, in terms of how to load it. I'm just bringing something up that should be up. My computer rebooted, and so I had everything ready, and then of course it rebooted last night. So Okay, here's what you do. You take your paper cartridge from your cartridge case. So you're taking your paper cartridge from your cartridge case. Your cartridge case is attached to your belt. It's where you have all your cartridges, your paper cartridges. So you take a cartridge from your cartridge case, and you take the tail, that part of that little tail here, part of the paper, and you rip it off with your teeth. Yes, in the process, you will get gunpowder in your mouth. So, you've taken your paper cartridge out of your cartridge case. You've ripped off the tail from the cartridge. And then you pour the gunpowder down into the barrel. Then you take the paper, put that in the barrel, and then the bullet into the barrel. So now everything that was in the cartridge is now in the barrel, with the exception of the tail, which you normally spit out. You rip off the tail, gunpowder in, paper in, bullet in. So far, so good? Then you take out your ramrod from underneath the barrel. You insert the ramrod into the barrel, driving everything down and packing it in. Now, this next step is incredibly important. You need to take the ramrod out of the barrel again, because you cannot shoot with it in there. It would end up being sort of like an arrow flying through the air, but not very accurate. And then you replace the ramrod to its position underneath the barrel. Now, I'm going to set the gun to the side here as I explain the next part. Going to move this, set that down. Now, we're going to move the hammer. Normally the hammer is in this position right here. We are going to pull the hammer halfway back to the position that you see on this diagram. This is called the half-cocked position. That is the half-cocked position. It's sort of like the safety position. It will not fire in that position. Now, on your belt, in addition to having a cartridge box, you also have something called a cap box. And what you do is you take a percussion cap, and a percussion cap is a little tiny brass container that has gunpowder in it, that when the hammer strikes it, it will send a spark. That spark will ignite that powder that we already put in the barrel, because there's a little channel between where it sparks and where the gunpowder is, down here. So, take a percussion cap out of my cap box, and you place that percussion cap on the nipple here so that the hammer can strike it. When you are ready to fire, you are going to pull the hammer back from its half-cocked position to, can anybody figure out what position that's going to be? Right now it's on in the half-cocked position. You need to pull it back to full-cocked position. Once you have it in the full-cocked position, you are ready to fire. Once you fire a round, boom. Now you have to do it all over again to fire again. Now you have to do it again. If you are on the battlefield and the enemy is coming after you, that's why you attach your bayonet to it, so that you can stab people. Because by the time you reload, you might be dead. Now, keep this in mind. If you are under fire, if you are on a battlefield and people are shooting at you, are you going to be able to do this easily? No. Those little percussion caps, they're about the size, at the most, of a tiny M&M. At the most. So you're fumbling trying to get that on so that it stays on. What happens if you drop it on the ground? You lost it. You got to find another one if you have any more. What happens if you're traveling across, you have to wade across a stream? What about your paper clippers? They're not going to be accurate. They're not going to be useful. Now, good soldiers could get off. Maybe, if they were experts, maybe 3 shots a minute. Maybe 3 shots a minute. And I have a little video here to show you how these were done. Take the cartridge, pour in the powder, paper, pull it, ramrod, ram it down, take the ramrod out. Half cock position, get your percussion cap, place it on the nipple, full cock position, aim. And he's doing that without anybody shooting at him. He was doing that without anybody shooting at him, and that took him 34 seconds. "34 seconds to do that." He is an expert. You can imagine if you're crouching down and there are enemies coming after you. You're in a swamp, you're in the forest, or you're in an open battlefield. How many of you would want to be in that situation with that technology? No. It is very difficult when you're in the fight to try to do that, because you have a lot of parts that you have to think about. And if you drop anything, somebody might say you're screwed. If you lose your ramrod, you're done for. Well, if you can salvage from another person's gun, that's fine. Now, you really need to keep in mind this technology when we're talking about these first battles, which we're going to look at today, because the technology determines how the fight happens. Yes, sir. No, this is the modern thing. In the Civil War, there were no automatics in the Revolutionary War at all. No way. Revolutionary War was like this, except they weren't rifled, and normally the only bullet was a round ball. But same kind of thing. They didn't have cartridges either. They had to actually have a flask with the gunpowder. Then they would put in cotton wadding. Then they would take out their either shot, small balls, or a large ball and put it into the ramrod. The technology really didn't change much in terms of the general concept of guns between the Revolutionary and the Civil War. So, as we look at these wars, as these battles, keep in mind the technology. No automatics, no nukes, no airplanes. Warfare is quite different than what you are used to seeing or hearing about. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're going to start these today. We will finish them up tomorrow. The early battles of the Civil War. First battle of the war was the Battle of Bull Run. The first battle of the war was the first Battle of Bull Run. Now, the North named battles differently than the South. The North named battles after rivers and streams that were located nearby. The South labeled battles or named battles based on the towns that they happened near. We will be using, for the most part, the North's terminology because that is the more accepted terminology in our region. And so we call it the First Battle of Bull Run. The Confederacy calls it something else, and I'm just going to give you this term for what the Confederacy calls this battle. The CSA calls it Manassas Junction. It's the Battle of Manassas Junction. And Manassas Junction is a place that's about 20 miles from Washington, D.C. The first battle of the Civil War happens about 20 miles from Washington, D.C. Remember, Washington, D.C. is right on the border of the Confederacy. Anybody remember what month Fort Sumter happened in, so that we can get sort of like a timeline going here so that you know how soon these battles are occurring after Lincoln is calling up troops and he decides to go to war? April. The first battle, or the first attack of the Civil War happened in April at Fort Sumter. Now, the first Battle of Bull Run happens in July. Is that a lot of time to actually get all your troops together and train them and supply them and make sure that they know how to operate one of those 1861 rifled muskets? No. It's not a lot of time. The USA was attacking. What was their goal, do you think? It was in the rating. Plus, you know about the Anaconda Plan. What was their goal? What was their target if they are attacking an area called Manassas Junction, which is right about here on this map? What are they trying to do? Yes, and the capital is? Yes. The goal is to capture Richmond. The Union wanted to capture Richmond, Virginia. It's part of the Anaconda Plan. And as we look at this battle, there are two main generals, two main leaders. The Union general is a general called McDowell, and he had 39,000 troops under his command. 39,000 troops. That's like 2.5 or 3 times the entire population of Forest Lake in his army. And he is battling the Confederate General Beauregard with 32,000 troops. So we have McDowell as the head of the Union Army in the east, and Confederate General Beauregard, who's defending at Bull Run or Manassas Junction. Now here's a picture of McDowell. Photography was just starting up around this time. And Beauregard. Beauregard is a French word which means handsome looking. What was that? I heard what you said. Keep in mind, that's his last name. He has no choice. Some place back in his family history, somebody might have looked very handsome. Not saying that he has to look very handsome. Or whether or not you think he looks very handsome. Maybe he looked very handsome for the time period. I don't know. I normally don't make that determination for a guy, so let's take a look at the details of this battle. We're going to look at the overview. Now, as somebody pointed out, you don't have a lot of time to train. Let's look at an overview here. Not a lot of time between calling up the 75,000 men and actually starting the first battle. Both armies are poorly trained, poorly equipped. It's basically, here's a gun, here's your ammunition, let's go. They're not trained. Why do you think that they didn't train them well? Why didn't they equip them well? Victor? What's the rush? Nobody was attacking anybody. There's Fort Sumter. Why should the United States invade so soon? Yeah, they thought this was going to be easy. The North thought, oh, those Southerners, they're a bunch of hicks. As soon as they see our Grand Army on the battlefield, they'll run with their tail between their legs and run home. The South, too, said, hey, this is going to be an easy war. Those Northerners don't know how to fight. They don't want to fight. We're the ones protecting our homeland. They have nothing to fight for. Both sides thought it would be an easy fight. And so, Northerners, you have some real smart people in the North. You have that better education and all that stuff. You think this war is going to be so easy that the residents from Washington, D.C., the senators and congressmen, they go out to the hilltop above Bull Run and have picnics to watch the battle. Women back then, ladies and gentlemen, no jeans, no pants. They wear those big hoop skirts. Now imagine all these fair ladies, snooty ladies, men in suits and top hats, women in the bell dresses. They're riding out in their carriages because they know that there's going to be a battle at Bull Run, and so they're going to go out for a picnic and watch the events. And they're going to watch the South get their butt kicked. It's going to be a fun afternoon. Would you do that? They really did not have a concept of what war was like. Those Washington residents went out and had picnics to watch a war. Boy, I could see that happening today. Yeah, let's take a vacation. Yeah. Sun Country Vacations presents the all-inclusive tour of Afghanistan. Hop on a chartered plane, fly off to Afghanistan, and watch the fighting in Helmand Province. Watch the Taliban get their butts kicked. That sounds like something I'd really want to do. Sounds safe to me. So the battle goes on, and the North begins to win. They're kicking butt, they're kicking butt, they're kicking butt. It's almost a victory for the North. Until no air raids, no airplanes. Until a major general from the South, a guy by the name of General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, comes riding up on his horse and rallies his troops. His troops were about ready to run away. And he comes up on his horse and he rallies his troops, and his troops love him so that they fight harder. It's not as easy for the North as they at home. Those picnickers are watching. Stonewall Jackson. Very famous guy, by the way, if you've never heard his name. Stonewall Jackson. There he is. He was known as Stonewall because he didn't let anything get through his lines. His soldiers were like a stone wall protecting things. Stonewall rallies the troops, and the Union troops go running. The Union troops don't just retreat. They literally drop their guns and go running. All the way back, 20 miles back to Washington, D.C. They were not trained. Now keep in mind, imagine this view. Union troops running back to Washington, D.C. There are artillery, there are cannons firing. You're sitting there having your little picnic overlooking the battlefield, and suddenly all these troops come running past you. What's going on? And then suddenly artillery starts being shelled all around you and your picnic. Your horses run off, and you're stuck there. Now, ladies, you can imagine, you, hotty-toddy ladies, with the big hoop skirts, trying to run back to Washington. Lifting up the front, trying to run away from the Confederate soldiers. It happened. It happened. War is not what you think of. They thought war was going to be this great, glorious thing. A lot of you Union soldiers made messes in your pantses. It was not uncommon. It was not uncommon. The Union retreated. They actually ran. It wasn't like, okay, let's march back. It was a full-out, oh crap, drop the gun and run. And some of you actually did crap. Not going to say who in this room, because that I don't know. That's too much information. TMI. And as a result of Stonewall Jackson's rallying the troops, the Confederacy wins the first battle of the Civil War. All because the troops were not trained. Northern troops didn't know what war was like. They thought, hey, everybody, let's jump on the bandwagon. Hey, ho! They didn't know what war was like. They didn't think about the people right next to them dying. And when you got shot with these balls, they're made out of soft lead. So when they hit you, they expand and flatten as they go through you. They make huge holes. They shatter bones. The general responsible for the Union Army and this major defeat was replaced right away. McDowell gets replaced by a guy called McClellan. Never again would you have civilians going out for a picnic to watch a battle. It sounds stupid because you know what war is like more than they did. We have TV, we have a whole bunch of things that shows you war. They didn't have those things back then. And we'll talk about that next week. So, first battle of Bull Run, the Confederacy wins. Any questions here? Okay, next battle. It's called the Battle of the Ironclads. And you read about this. What's an ironclad? Who can tell me what an ironclad is? Even if you don't give me details about it, this is proving to me who read and who didn't read. What is an ironclad? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people can tell me what an ironclad is based on the reading from yesterday. You don't have to give me details. I just want to know in general, what is it? Is it a building? Is it a car? What is it? Spencer. It is a boat. Battle of the Ironclads. When does it happen? March 1862. Ooh. When was the first Battle of Bull Run? July 1861. We have a gap here, don't we? What do you think they decided to do after the first Battle of Bull Run? What did they learn after that huge mistake? You have to train your soldiers. Yeah. You have to train your soldiers. You have to supply your soldiers. Battle of the Ironclads, March 1862. The goal is the Confederacy is trying to break the blockade. Remember the blockade? The ships blocking southern ports as part of the Anaconda Plan? The goal here is to try to break out, to break the blockade. Who is doing it? There are two ships. One is called the CSA Merrimack. We call it the Merrimack in the north. They called it the Virginia. And the USA had a ship called the Monitor. These were two different kinds of ships that had never been seen before. The Merrimack. It was a modified old wooden ship. A wooden ship with sails and everything. It looked like this to begin with. That is the Merrimack to begin with. So they take this Merrimack and they chop down the sails, they change out the engine, and they cover the sides with iron. That's why it's called an ironclad. Anything that is clad is attached. So iron is added to the sides of the Merrimack. Yes. No, I said USS. This might actually be CSS. USS stands for United States Ship. USS, like the USS Enterprise, which is an actual military ship. The Merrimack. Now you take those sails off and modify it, that's what it looked like after. Before, after. That's the Merrimack, that's what the South has. The North has a ship called the Monitor. And the Monitor is a totally brand new design. Something that was designed specifically for this war. It wasn't taking an old ship and changing it, it was creating a brand new ship. Totally out of iron. Here it is right here. Very low profile. And you can go down underneath and it's open for soldiers down inside. The main thing about the Monitor is that it had a rotating gun turret. A turret is a round thing with guns on various sides. And so this thing had the opportunity to move a gun around to shoot where it needed to shoot. And just so that you know what size guns we're talking here, here's an actual picture of it. One shooting in this direction, one shooting in the other direction. It would take about maybe 15 minutes or so to be able to turn it and fire. The other ship had many guns but couldn't steer them, couldn't direct them. The result was the cannonballs kept bouncing off of each ship. Now look at the dents here. You can imagine being inside this giant tin can with cannonballs hitting it. You can imagine how loud it was inside. The cannonballs kept bouncing off. There were no winners. Neither ship could be sunk. So as a result, the Merrimack was stuck in port. The Merrimack could not leave port. Merrimack was stuck in port and was not able to break out of the blockade. Any questions about the Battle of the Ironclads? Okay, moving on. We're going to start the Battle of Shiloh. Shiloh is actually a church in Tennessee. So we had Manassas Junction or Bull Run there. We're going to have a battle right here in Tennessee. And in this battle, we're looking at April of 1862. April of 1862. Don't know why people are packing up. Remember, the clock is wrong. April of 1862, the goal. If it's taking place right there, what is the Union goal? If this is a Union battle, what is the goal based on the Anaconda Plan? You're going to hear me talking about that Anaconda Plan these entire weeks. What is the goal? Yes, the Union attempted to control the Mississippi River. And the Battle of Shiloh is a two-day battle between USA General Grant, who was an alcoholic that was kicked out of the Army back in the 1850s. And he was asked back during the Civil War. He was a major alcoholic. He eventually became president while he was still an alcoholic. He is on our $50 bill. And he was a major alcoholic. He had 40,000 men, and he was battling General Beauregard again, as well as a new general that you hadn't seen yet called Johnston. And they had 44,000 men. There's Grant, the alcoholic. And there's Beauregard, the handsome guy. At least in his last name. So, day one, here's what happens. Who has more soldiers? The South, the Confederacy. So Grant knows he's not going to attack. Grant actually waits for reinforcements. In Nashville, there are some more soldiers. So he decides he's not going to attack, he's just going to wait until he gets support. Beauregard and Johnston, they realize they have more troops than Grant, and they know that reinforcements are coming, so they decide they're going to attack Grant before his reinforcements get there. So the South attacks and pushes Grant back. It's not a total defeat. Grant retreats for one day so that he can wait for the reinforcements to arrive. Day one goes to the Confederacy, but they cannot totally destroy the Union Army. We will finish up early Civil War battles tomorrow. If you did not read, read for tomorrow, 16-2.